you do that? How did you do that?
Welcome back everyone to another ESO build video. Today it's going to be the update to the Off Balance build. This is the Magicka Templar for the Greymoor chapter. Now, this has been used a lot in the past and has kind of got the same ideas as before, where this actually does a really good amount of single target damage and solid AoE damage at the same time as providing healing bonuses, damage bonuses, and debuffs all at the same time for your group and versus the targets, and gives sustain to the group as well. Everything is in one place and all you have to do is keep up your rotation. So we're going to go into that a lot more in detail later on, but first of all we're going to go into the stats. Now we're on 39.5k max Magicka with 812 recovery, we're 18k max health, 10k max stamina with 53.6% crit chance alongside 3k spell damage, 22k spell resistance and 17.5k physical resistance. We have a lot of resist there. Now those stats can go up slightly during combat, don't worry, that is going to be slightly altered once you're actually in a fight, but that's our base stats. Now we have 64 points into max Magicka, none into health at all. We are using the Shadow Munderstone with flat food. Instead of going the flat health max magic food, you can of course use this expensive stuff, which will give you max health and max magicka, a little less than the other stuff, but it does give you a health and magicka recovery bonus as well. Failing that, of course, you can use Witch Mothers, which doesn't give you the health recovery, but it does give you a healthy stat boost to both health and magicka and recovery at the same time. Just bear in mind, of course, if you have lesser resources in comparison to this one, you will have better sustain because you've got the recovery bonus, but your flat damage will go down. So this is really up to you, but the way the build's set up, if you use the basic version of it, you shouldn't struggle with your sustain anyway. But for the purpose of the video, we're going to use this flat stuff. And of course, we are not a vampire. We were previously, we're not anymore. We could have added Sated Fury to our rotation, but for the amount of time that we didn't actually use it, it wasn't really that beneficial. Yeah, 630 spell damage is great, extra, but your increase the cost and the fact that you'd have to use glyphs to kind of bring that down meant that you're just trading off spell damage for recovery anyway, and you end up roughly about the same, just easier to die. So we decided to dump it. So we're not using vampire on this particular build. If you choose to, that's entirely up to you, but that will alter the results. However, there is a different change to the build, or an alternative addition if you like, which will dramatically improve your damage output, but we will get to that in the gear. So, first of all, let's get into the skills before we do any of that gear stuff. So, first of all, this is actually a flex slot. This is one ability that we do change. The Purifying Light, it's in a Dawn's Wrath skill line. Third ability you unlock starts off as Backlash, morph it to Purifying Light. Now, this will put an effect on the target. It will do direct damage initially in the form of magic damage. And over 6 seconds, it will actually kind of calculate up 20% of all the damage you do to that target. After the 6 seconds is up, it will explode. Or, if you reapply another one on top of it, it will explode. And it will release 20% of the damage done, and it can, of course, now crit, which is great. It's really, really powerful, nice direct damage there. And at the same time, once it pops, you will get a heal on the ground in area of effect, which will heal you and your group every 2 seconds for 6 seconds. So you want to keep this up as much as possible. It's a really good skill. It's quite cheap as well, but if you don't want to use this, you can actually swap it out. Now, this is more single target, of course, because it only applies to one target, but you can put it on multiple different ones, but each one has its own individual pop. What you can do is you can go into Restoring Light, and you can get the fourth ability here called Ritual of Retribution. Now, this starts off as Cleansing Ritual. This instead will go down on the ground, and all enemies caught inside of this will actually take damage over time, every 2 seconds for 12 seconds. And this is quite a nasty area of effect damage over time. Also, anyone standing inside of this will actually heal every 2 seconds as well. So, for every 2 seconds, you damage people, and at the same time, you heal people. So this is a double dip ability. It does both. Also, if you activate it, you will purify yourself, removing negative effects, and other people can actually take a synergy from this, called Purify, and they can take off negative effects off of them as well. So it's a cleanse, it's a heal, and it's a damage over time. Very, very nice indeed. The choice is yours as to which one you use. This one for more single target, this one for more utility plus area of effect if you've got ads. Whichever you want is up to you, but they're both really, really strong. Now, the next up is Barb Trap. This is in the Fighters Guild skill line. This is the last ability you unlock. Starts off as Trap Beast, morph it to Barb Trap. This goes down on the ground. This does damage to the target who is affected by it over 18 seconds. And in the meantime, it will give you 10% increase to all critical damage. We're using this essentially for the buff. Yes, it does immobilize targets if they can be immobilized, but if they can't, don't worry, it will still give you the bonus nonetheless. Keep this in your rotation at all times. Next is Radiant Oppression or Radiant Glory. There are two different morphs to this. The choice is yours. Now, the difference between these two is quite simple, but essentially this is an execute. Starts off as Radiant Destruction, morph it to Radiant Oppression if you want slightly more damage out of it. Now, I don't mean at base. This will do damage over time, over 1.8 seconds, ticking consistently. And the lower the target's health, the more aggressive this gets. So you don't want to do this around 50%. You want to get under 50. So around sort of 40% if it's an ad, 35 to 30% if it's a boss. Now, this version of it will deal up to 20% more damage based on the proportion of your current Magicka. That doesn't mean whether you have 40k or 50k or 80k. What it means is how much percentage you have left in your bar. So if you've got 10% left, that's a tiny bonus. If you've got 90% left, it's a massive bonus. The difference is, though, can you sustain it? If you can sustain a stupid amount of Magicka and keep your bar really, really high, this is going to be quite strong. But if you find that during execute you're really, really low on Magicka, you're going to get the lesser effect of this bonus, or none at all because it's too low, and you want to go with the other one instead. I would actually recommend the other one because you can actually get the same damage output depending on your Magicka pool regardless, as long as you haven't got a full bar, obviously. And at the same time, it can save your life. Radiant Glory, the other morph of this, is applied exactly the same way, but it will heal you for 20% of the damage done per tick. So if you hit something for 100k Jesus Beam, you're going to get a 20k heal every tick for it. It's really, really powerful. I would highly recommend, especially for newer Templars, you use the Glory morph of this instead of the Oppression, but the choice, of course, like I said, is yours. Next up is our main spammable. This is Puncturing Sweeps in the Adric Spear skill line. This is the first ability to unlock. Starts off as Puncturing Strikes, morph it to Puncturing Sweeps. This is very simple. You activate the ability and for 1 second it will stab, 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 stab in front of you. The first target hit, the one closest to you, will get hit for the most per hit, and every other target around it will get hit for less, but they will all still get hit nonetheless anyway. So this is an area of effect ability. This counts in area of effect in front of you. Also, all damage that you do, you will heal for 40% of the damage done. So the more jabs you get in, the more heals you get back. You damage and heal at the same time, much like Ritual of Retribution, which is another skill we're obviously using. Damage on the ground, heal on the ground. Damage in front of you, heal in return. Just remember, of course, the first target, or the front one, the big one, is the one that gets hit the most. Inner Light is next. This is on our Major skill line, actually. This is on the bar for no reason other than for stats. While slotted, you will get max magic increase of 5%, and you will also get Major Prophecy, increasing your crit chance by 10% as well, which is 2191. It starts off as Mage Light, morph it to Inner Light. Our ultimate on the front bar is Shooting Star. Now, you don't have to actively use this, although you can if you want to. If you want to actively use it, you want to double bar it. So then you get the bonuses from the Major Guild on both bars. We'll go over that in a moment. But this does flame damage when it first lands, and then does flame damage in area of effect in AoE underneath the target. So the first one is a direct hit, although it can hit multiples, and then on the ground there's a dot. However, the more targets you hit, the more ultimate you'll get back. So if you use this in a trash pool and you hit, say, 20 enemies, you're going to get that times 12 back. So you can somewhat spam the ultimate in some situations. However, that's not the main ultimate I use, but you can do if you want. Remember, if you want to use this actively and nothing else, double bar it because of the passives. If not, put it on the front for the passives, which we'll get to later, and we want a Thunderous Rage on the back. We'll come to that in a moment. Harness Magicka is on here for protection. This is from the Light Armor skill line. Starts off as Annulment, morph it to Harness Magicka. This is a bit of an oh shit button, and basically if you activate it, you will protect yourself for X amount of damage, capped at 50% of your max health. So of course, the more magic you have, the stronger this will be, but it's capped at 50% of your health, so technically the more health you have, the stronger it will be as well, as long as you can balance your stats. Also, when you get hit by Magicka type abilities, you will actually restore Magicka up to 3 times for absorbing the damage, unless of course the damage shield is completely gone. If you choose to, if you don't think you need a damage shield, although I would highly recommend putting one on, you can of course turn this into Inner Light instead. You can just have 5% increase to max magic on both bars. Choice is yours, however. Next up is Unstable Wall of Elements, which is called Unstable Wall of Storms because of our weapon choice. So Destruction Staff skill line, second ability to unlock, starts off as Wall of Elements, morph it to Unstable Wall of Elements. This goes on the ground, does damage every 1 second to enemies caught inside of it, and then it will explode at the end. Or, if you reapply it, it will explode, because it's counted as it's finished. The lightning version of this can knock enemies off balance. So what you need to understand is there is a concussion status effect from lightning damage. Any lightning damage you do could cause a concussion status effect, which basically makes the enemy take 8% more damage from everybody. During this time, if a lightning wall of elements is underneath them, they will be knocked off balance for 7 seconds. During this time, your heavy attacks will return double resources, they will do more damage, and there are champion point passives that you can take advantage of to do more damage for yourself and your group. You are applying a buff here, or debuff, for everyone to take advantage of. This must be down at all times. Solar Barrage is next. It's in our Dawn's Wrath skill line. This is quite simple actually. You activate this and it will give you damage in area of effect to anyone close by over 10 seconds, every 2 seconds, and it will empower your light attacks, making them do 40% more damage, so don't miss your light attacks. This starts off as Solar Flare, morph it to Solar Barrage. The other morph is extremely different to this. This is the one you want. Don't let it run out. Channeled Focus is in our Restoring Light skill line. It is the 5th ability you unlock. Starts off as Rune Focus, morph it to Channeled Focus. You don't have to use this all the time if you don't want to, but I put it on my bar for emergencies or just keeping up a consistent rotation if there isn't much sustain offered in the group. So this will give you 5280 as a resistance buff, but for standing inside of it, it will be increased by 50%. So this is a massive, massive resistance buff for us, and it's the only one of its kind that is boosted in the game. Major Resolve is a flat bonus. There's many ways to get it, but it doesn't get stronger, except for this one. So if you do need resistances, if you do feel like you're a little bit too squishy, use this. And also for doing so, every 1 second, you will have 240 Magicka restored. So activate this, 20 seconds of 480 recovery, because recovery is calculated every 2 seconds. That is nuts. If you don't feel like you need this, but you do feel like you need the damage shield, you can of course change this to Inner Light instead. That way you never have to activate it, and someone else can give you a resistance buff, and your recovery is covered, apparently. The choice is yours. You can put it here, or there, or none at all. This is for protection, so is this, but it's also for recovery. If you don't feel like you need it, you can swap it for something else, but I would recommend leaving it on your bar just in case. It's really handy. Blazing Spear, of course, is in the Adric Spear skill line. 4th ability to unlock, starts off as Spear Shards, morph it to Blazing Spear. This is a damage over time on the ground with an initial hit, and this does deal damage every 1 second for 10 seconds. At the same time, it has a synergy applied to it. So someone else can take this and gain 3,960 Magicka or Stamina back, whichever one of the two is higher. And since you're in melee position with this particular setup, anyone close by can take this. So it could be the tank, it could be a Stamina DPS beside you, who knows. Anyone can pick this up. Now next up is Thunderous Rage. This is in the Destruction Staff skill line. You need level 50 for this. Starts off as Elemental Storm, morph it to Elemental Rage. Because we are using Lightning, we get a 2-second increase, and the damage is Lightning damage. If you were using anything else, it would be different, and you'd have a different bonus instead. Just remember, with this being lightning damage, this can help with concussion, to help push concussion on this, to make it go off balance, to give people 7 seconds of that exploitory opportunity. This is very important that you stack these up. I would use this all the time instead of your Shooting Star, but if you choose to use Shooting Star, like I said earlier, I would double bar it because there are passives that apply to it. Now, I'm going to go into the passives, and this will start making a lot more sense. So, Adric Spear, first of all, is very important. This increases your critical damage by 10% and increases your damage done versus block and targets if an ability from this skill line is slotted. We have one on the front, we have one on the back. You gain minor protection for 6 seconds, reducing damage taken by 8%. So all you have to do when activating an Adric Spear ability is just take the buff. You don't need another skill on your bar to get minor protection. You don't need circular protection. You don't need a full set to do it. You just press this. So if you use Puncture and Sweeps, you get 6 seconds of minor protection. If you use your Spear Shards, you get 6 seconds of minor protection. In our normal rotation outside of Execute, we basically have 100% uptime on minor protection without the need for any additional skills. This is very important. When you deal damage with an Adric Spear ability, you have a 25% chance to deal additional damage. So every 0.5 seconds, you can do more physical or magic damage, depending on which one of the two is higher. For us, it's magic damage. So every half a second, doing damage of Adric Spear stuff can give us free damage. This channels for a second. This does damage every 1 second. If they cross over, you could get 2 in the same second and do a lot of damage. This increases your weapon damage, which isn't that important, but we do want the spell resistance bonus, so we'll take that passive. Dawn's Wrath, of course, is quite important. This increases duration of your Sunfire, Eclipse, Solar Flare, and Nova abilities. So we're not using Nova per se, but you could put this on if you want a damage reduction boost to your group during heavy mechanics. But if you did, obviously this would be extended. And of course, this is increased as well. Solar Barrage actually has 10 seconds instead of 8, which is quite handy. When you use a Dawn's Wrath ability, you will get 3 ultimate back, and this can happen once every 6 seconds. We're using one on this bar, we're using one on this bar. During our rotation, we're going to make sure we always get that passive, which is handy. When you cast a Dawn's Wrath ability, you will give minus sorcery to your entire group, increasing your spell damage by 10%. That's you and them. So as long as you're using one of those abilities, there's your increase to spell damage. That also counts towards your Jesus Beam as well, because that comes from this skill line. When you take this passive, you will reduce all health, magic, stamina, and ultimate costs by 5%. Make sure you get this as soon as possible. It makes it a lot easier to sustain. Although our sustain is covered with our sets anyway, this is really, really helpful. Restore and Light, of course, you are going to need these. Before, I didn't use too many of them. Now you might want to. This increases the healing effects from your Restore and Light abilities by up to 12% in proportion to the severity of the target's wound. So the weaker they are at the moment, the lower their health, the more beneficial these heals are. Now, we are using Ritual of Retribution as an option, so you will want this passive. So if you are using this for damage output and heals at the same time, this will benefit from it. While standing in your own cleansing ritual, which counts as this, or your rune focus, which is this here, you will actually gain the ability to have minor mending, just built in. So as long as you stand in your area of effect abilities, these 2 specific ones, one or the other, you will actually have minor mending unless you leave the area, in which case it will go away after 4 seconds. Minor mending increases all of your healing done by 8%. We have minor protection, meaning we don't take extra damage. We have minor mending, which increases our heals. We have this here, which will increase our heals from our Ritual of Retribution if we go low. We heal from our puncture and sweeps. We are constantly damaging and healing at the same time while taking less damage. This is absolutely nuts. You're very hard to kill. Also, it increases the amount of damage you can block. So you are going to need this passive, because if you do have to block while inside of any of these situations or abilities, there's your buff for that as well. This one here isn't that important. We don't actually use any of these abilities that are benefiting from this passive, so you can dump that one. This, however, does give you an increased res speed. So you can resurrect someone 20% faster than anybody else because of your class. Make sure you get that passive. And of course, if you do use a soul gem, which you should do when you resurrect someone, you have a chance of filling an empty soul gem back up again. So you can actually do it for nothing. Destro stuff is very important. Trifocus is insane. This will increase the effectiveness of your shock staff if you get this passive, because not only will you be able to do a channeled heavy attack on the target in front of you, but all damage, every tick of that channel will actually spread to nearby targets. Bear in mind, of course, yes, you can crit that heavy attack, and yes, that can increase the overall damage on single target, but the damage that you do flat, excluding the crit, is what you will do in area of effect. Your splash damage is based off of the base heavy attack. So the more you push your heavy attack to be stronger, yes, of course, that will make your area of effect higher, especially during off balance, but the crit won't count towards those surrounding targets. This increases your penetration with your Destro staff, so your light attacks, heavy attacks, and your Destro skills are improved, so you go through their resistances more. This basically increases your luck with status effects. Status effects from burning, concussion, or chilled from a Destro staff passive point of view are more likely to happen. So with this, you have to be holding the staff. So if you're a healer or a tank and you're trying to get concussion and you're on the sword and board or a resto staff bar, you're missing this passive. If you're double Destro, no matter what bar you're on, you always have this passive. So our chance to increase the concussion uptime is higher than others. But bear in mind, of course, the more concussion you get, the more off balance you get, and the more uptime we can have on that for our group. We are doing this on purpose. I know people have screamed flame staves and all the rest of it. You can use a flame staff if you want, but you won't get the off balance from it. Unless your group is already covering it, stay with a lightning staff. If your group is covering it, then of course use a flame staff. And that is also reflective of a dummy as well. The dummy has off balance on it. It's already covered. If you want to see what you could potentially get, put a flame staff on and you can go from there. But if you don't have off balance in your group, you are going to need to be the one bringing it. This is very important as well. We are doing a lot of area of effect damage. If we are not using Purifying Light and we are using Ritual of Retribution, that's area of effect. Puncture and Sweeps is area of effect. So is this, so is this, so is this, so is this, so is the after effect of Shooting Star. Everything we're using apart from our Execute is area of effect. Now the trade-off is, of course, if you use a Flame Staff, your Execute is going to be stronger, but all the rest of your skills all the way through the fight are going to be weaker. So we've buffed up all of our area of effect, and that actually balanced out to give us a healthy Execute rather than a boosted one, at the same time as making sure our consistent DPS was up. The Lightning Staff was actually higher in overall output, regardless of the last ticks or these doing a little bit more damage. So it was a trade-off, but it works really, really well. And also, not to mention, of course, if you do need to heavy attack for your sustained lightning stuff, does apply splash damage, so there's more area effect for you there. This is built this way on purpose. It's built to have really good single target, but a lot of AoE at the same time. Now, next up, of course, is when you kill an enemy with a destruction staff ability, whether it be light attack, heavy attack, or a skill, you will get 3,600 Magicka back, which is pretty handy for our sustain. We are using 5 pieces of light armor to get every single one of these. This will reduce effectiveness of snares applied to you, and of course reduce the cost of sprinting. This will increase your mag recovery and reduction to cost for Magicka skills. This will increase your spell resistance. This will increase your crit rating, so that stacks on top of our other crit rating as well. This will give us another 10%. And this will give us a 4884 penetration bonus, so we will actually go through targets' resistances with spell-based abilities. Now, that means we don't need a lot of points in our champion points for this, because it's very, very easy to overcap with penetration with Magicka stuff versus stamina stuff. So we're in a quite healthy place with this, but you got to make sure that you do get the 5th piece bonuses right there. You have to be wearing 5 pieces though, otherwise it won't work. We don't need all of these. We'll just take the 2 that we do want, which is Windwalker and Athletics, because this benefits us for our sustain and our dodge roll and all that good stuff. You can, of course, use this if you want to increase your weapon crit rating, so you can get a little tiny bit more out of Beast Trap if you crit, but it's really not that important. These 2, however, are. Heavy armor, we're using 1 piece. You want the top 3. This will increase your resistances, this will increase your recovery, and you'll actually get stuff back when you get hit, and this will increase your health as well. They're minor bonuses, but they do count. Undaunted, of course, we are going to make sure we get these 2 passives here. Any synergy you take will give you resources back, and for using different types of armor, you get a 2% bonus to all of your resources. So, for instance, in this particular build, we're using 1 heavy, 1 medium, and 5 light, which gives us 3 different bonuses, giving us a 6% overall. Mage's Guild is important. If you're not using Meteor, of course, you can put Nova on. But if you are using Meteor on the front bar, you will want to make sure you get these passives alongside of it, because you'll need Mage's Guild 10 anyway. And this will increase your max Magicka and recovery by 2% for each skill on your bar from this skill line. We actually have 2. So having this here and this here, we've got a 4% increase overall, both recovery and flat. If you're on the back bar, if you decide to put Inner Light here or here, and you're double bar and Meteor, the same applies on this bar too. Again, that's a choice. It's entirely up to you. We are a high elf, of course. You don't have to be, but this did work out really, really well. If you use a class ability, which costs Magicka or stamina, you will get 640 of the opposite resource back, depending on which one is lowest. For us, our lowest resources are stamina. So if we use a Magicka ability from our class skill line, which we are using, we will get 640 stamina back, which means we can sustain our Beast Trap more often. We don't have to use a Magicka ability for minus force, because we've got that covered. And of course, if we are blocking, dodging, and all that good stuff, we can get stamina back more often. Also, while channeling, you have a 5% reduction to damage. It's not a flat 5%, it's multiplicative. I do have a video about that in the How to Get Good series, about how to calculate damage mitigation, but it's still a decent bonus nonetheless. And of course, it's very easy for us to apply. Our Puncture and Sweeps is a channeled ability. Our Jesus Beam is a channeled ability. While doing our spammables or while working for our execute rotation, we actually take less damage. We have 2k max magic and we have 258 spell damage on top. This is a very good choice for this particular build, but if you want to use other races, of course you can do. Just bear in mind what you may have to mess with stat-wise in order to balance it out so it works for you. Alchemy, of course, you don't have to have every single one of these skills. You do have to get to level 50, though, and then you can dump your points and save it for this one. Medicinal use will increase the duration of your potions by 30%. If you have crafted potions, spell pots, tripods, whatever it is you're using, you will have a duration for the buffs, and this will make them last 47 seconds. The cooldown's 45. Keep your potions up 100% of the time. They are consumable buffs. You don't let your buffs run out. Don't let your potions run out. People that wait until their resources are really, really low before they pop a potion are doing it wrong. Make sure you activate your potion at the start of the fight and keep them coming. Do not let it run out. Now we're going to go into gear. So, first of all, who's surprised? Nobody. Overwhelming lightning staff on the front bar, imprecise, with increased weapon and spell damage glyph on there as well. Now this will give you a magic bonus, a spell damage bonus, a spell damage again, and when you deal damage with a class ability, so you don't have to activate one, you just have to have it running already, you will actually do damage in front of you. You can hit up to 6 targets, and you'll do 1.4k a second in shock damage. They can be as much as 8 meters away from you, and it will last for 6 seconds. 15% of the damage you deal is given back to you in Magicka. Every 6 seconds you can reapply this without fail, as long as you, of course, have a class ability running. So if your spears are on the ground already and they start ticking damage, this can fire. If you activate your Puncture and Sweeps, the first ability or the last ability hit from it can activate it, as long as you're doing damage with your class skills. A long time ago it was per activation, now it's per tick of damage. So as long as you're using your abilities, this will fire. You will get loads and loads of Magicka back, and you will do a decent amount of damage. Not just single target, but in area of effect as well. This is a very strong set. You want to have the staff on the front bar, which is a lightning staff that does drop from Tempest Island from the last boss. She has her own unique version of this. And jewelry pieces, or body pieces, whichever you can fit. In the meantime, what you want to do, of course, 2 Bloodthirst E1 infused, by the way, with spell damage on all of them. You want to get Hollow Fang. Hollow Fang will give you a spell crit bonus, a max magic bonus, and a spell crit bonus, so that will benefit us a lot across the board. Nice flat stats, nice crit. And whenever you critically heal or critically damage a target, you will spawn a ball of hemoglobin in front of you, big blood orb, and after 2 seconds it will pop. Anyone caught inside that area of effect will be given 3k max Magicka back, and it will apply minor vitality, increasing their healing received by 8%. And this can happen once every 9 seconds. Every 9 seconds you give people minor vitality and 3k Magicka, just for you doing your damage. If you heal with a crit, or do damage with a crit, which you will do, this will apply every 9 seconds. And they stack. So if you have multiple people using this, that's multiple resource gains from many different people at once. So if you have 3 of them, that's 9k Magicka back for everyone caught inside of this every 9 seconds. The minor vitality doesn't stack, it just reapplies, but you've got a constant resource gain here, and it's not just for you, it's for everyone else as well. So this gives you resources back and does damage. This allows you to do damage, and then if you do so, you will actually get stuff back. You've got so many different things going on here. You've got minor vitality from this, you've got resource gain from this, you've got resource gain from overwhelming. You have resource gain for your group from your spears, which they can take as a synergy. You can apply off balance. You can apply minor vulnerability, which is concussion. You can apply minor protection to yourself, minor mending to yourself. You've got heals going on around the room, damage going on around the room. You've got AoE damage and single target. You've literally got everything you need, and you don't have to change your rotation at all to apply any of this. You just turn up, do what you did on the dummy, and do it against the actual target, and everyone will benefit. It's really, really helpful. Not to mention, of course, you've got a massive resistance buff and huge recovery. Monster set wise, we are obviously going to be using Jeff. Maw of Inferno has been boosted to crap. It's got a Magicka bonus now instead of health, and 33% chance from any light attack or heavy attack to spawn a Dage off for 15 seconds, do loads and loads of damage in front of you in flame and smacks and breath and all that good stuff. And it can be summoned every 15 seconds. So as soon as he's dead, he can apply himself again. It's stupid. You could have bad luck and not see him that often, or you could have really good luck and he could have 100% uptime. Very, very strong indeed. Yes, of course, you can still do Zaan if you want. It's really nice burst for very short fights, but Jeff has a much higher duration, so he actually outperformed in most cases. And Grofdar is still a very good option as well, except remember, Grofdar is area of effect around your character. You move, it stays with you. Alambris, however, on the other hand, this did get a bit buffed. The application for it is much, much easier. You do fire or lightning damage, depending on which one makes it fire. And it has a similar uptime to Grofdar, but a faster proc rate. So instead of 5 seconds up, 5 down, it's 5 up, 3 down. This does have more damage than Grofdar as well. So if you're in a static fight, Jeff or Alambris is probably a better option for you. But if you are moving around the room a lot, you want to go with Grofdar instead. Now, choices. Backbar weapon. If you don't have the Maelstrom weapon, use a willpower weapon. But do you really need to anymore? This here will give you a penetration bonus, and all your light and heavy attacks are stronger. We're getting stronger heavy attacks from off balance anyway. This is great. Shock and infused is what you want on here. Unless you have loads of off balance in your group already, in which case change it to a flame with a flame glyph. That's a choice. Now, for those of you looking at this thinking, oh, I'll never complete VMA, Greymoor changed the game a bit, because on normal, you can get the normal Maelstrom weapons. And they are exactly the same as the weapons you've been using for the last 4 years. The ones that people thought they could never get. You can now get them on normal. So for builds like this, if you're not too worried about that pen bonus, which you only get on the back bar anyway, you can actually catch up now much, much faster and have much, much more effective builds, because if you do need the Maelstrom weapon, it's now easier to get. Overwhelming can be got on normal. Normal Maelstrom weapon can be caught on normal. Holofang can be done on normal. Jeff requires a vet dungeon. That's it. Simple as that. Now, choices-wise, you can change Overwhelm into Sororia if you prefer, but just bear in mind, some mechanics won't permit you to actually keep this bonus up all the time, so that is entirely up to you. And also, if you want to go with the new Thracian Strangler set, you will get up to 3k spell damage if you kill 20 enemies and don't crouch or die. The downside is you will take 40% more damage, you will have 40% less effective healing received, and 40% less effective damage shields. Now, while that sounds drastic, this is actually very, very good for us because we do have lots of protection. We do have lots of heals going on anyway, and we can actually survive without seeing much of a difference. So you have to watch out for one-shots, of course, but if you keep up your rotation, you're constantly healing, you're constantly doing damage, and you will hit very, very hard. So when that happens, you've got two options. You can put Thracian Stranglers on your arms, and you will lose a Hollow Fang piece. So you'll lose your sustain there, and you'll have to heavy attack a bit more. In those situations, you don't necessarily have to keep the 4 pieces of Hollow Fang on, but you can optimize it slightly. So you've got Spell Crit, Max Magic, and Spell Crit. If you went with Ether, you'd have Spell Crit minus Slayer, and then spell damage, so a little bit more damage. But if you had Perfected False Gods, just 4 pieces, you can then have Spell Crit, just like Hollow Fang, but instead of the Max Magic, you get minus Slayer, so slightly higher. But the choice is yours. If you want to keep it simple, you're not going to see that much of a difference between the two. Now, your front bar, in this situation, if you are using Thracian Stranglers, you can, of course, go with Overwhelmment, and it'll be absolutely fine. You can even go with Hollow Fang here if you preferred, or you can go Sororia, and if you do go Sororia, obviously, you don't need to go with any of these 2 trial pieces, because you've already got minus Slayer, which means Hollow Fang can stay on the body, and you'll be fine. They are options, of course. Whichever way around you go is entirely up to you, but if you do want to use this, and you can survive, and you can use the rotation very, very well in combat, you are going to hit extremely hard. This can go anywhere in excess of 110 to 115k DPS if you put Thracian Stranglers on, but again, survival is the issue, and you do have to be the one getting kills. For now, though, we'll make it simple. We'll stick to the sort of 75-80k version of the build. We'll have this. Traits, by the way, just in case. Precise on the front, Infused on the back. Divines on everything. 2 Bloodthirsty, 1 Infused. Now, we're going to go into champion points, then we're going to explain the rotation. These can be changed in any content you like, depending on what you're up against, but this is a good base for pretty much everything. 72 into Ironclad to reduce the amount of direct damage you take. 64 and 64 into Magicka and physical type damage. 51 into Thick Skin to reduce the amount of damage over time you take. Make sure you obviously pay attention to this passive. You'll have it anyway, but if you break free, your next stamina ability within 5 seconds will be 80% cheaper, which means you can use a Beast Trap for basically nothing. 90 points in here to increase your healing received. And of course, Field Physician. This will give you a bonus, so you take less damage while resurrecting people. You're the fastest reser on the field. Make sure obviously you're picking people up, and you will take less damage. We've got so many buffs and bonuses that stick to us without us having to change anything. We can take advantage of all of those and this at the same time. 44 into Warlord to reduce the cost of break free. 75 into Tenacity for more heavy attack return. From our heavy attacks, we will actually get magic back, and if it's off balance, you get double that, and then this obviously stacks with it as well, which is quite nice. Extra recovery for Arcanus, putting 14% in here, which is 75 points. Don't go any higher than this, because otherwise it's going to cost you 25 points to get to 100, which will then only give you 1 extra percent. This is fine as it is. 72 into Tumbling, 4 into Shadow Ward. This will reduce the cost of dodge roll. This is a tiny block bonus, and for having 75 points in this tree, we unlock a Treasure Hunter passive, so looting is a little bit more beneficial for you. Get some higher quality gear. 56 points into Elfborn to increase all of our crit damage by 20%. 64 into Elemental Expert, giving us a 13% damage output increase to everything we do. 6 points into Spell Erosion. We don't need any more points into there. 3 points into Staff Expert. 66 into Master at Arms, because our Puncture and Sweeps and a few of our other abilities, including our light attacks, are actually direct damage. And 75 points into Thermatos to increase all of our damage over time, which we do have a lot of, and this opens up the Exploiter passive. We are supplying off balance to everybody. This is our job in this particular build. It's designed that way on purpose. Why not take the 10% extra damage when things are off balance? Now, rotation is going to be quite simple. There's 2 versions. One is not very complicated, and neither is the other one. So, if you have your Ritual of Retribution, or you have your Purifying Light, you want to make sure these are obviously active, but you don't have to apply them straight away. What you need to do straight away is put down your Beast Trap and your Resistance buff. So as long as those are down, you're good. In fact, you can put this on first, then put your Beast Trap, whichever. Start on the back bar with Spears, Light Attack, Solar Barrage, Light Attack, Wall of Elements, Swap Bars. Pretty simple. Next up is Ritual of Retribution, light attack first of course, or Purifying Light. So whichever one of these you have on, you use that one on your front bar. So as soon as you swap with Wall of Elements, light attack, skill. Now, light jabs, light jabs, light jabs. 3 of them. Light, beast trap, swap. Light spear, light solar, light wall, swap. Light ritual, light jabs 3 times. You never have to change it. That's all you do. Light, beast trap, swap. Your sets will fire, all your buffs are firing, all your healing and damage is going off, your resources are coming back from Holofang, everything's doing great. Now if you want to change it, if you want to keep up your resistance buff all the time, every second rotation, do this. Spear, light solar, light resistance buff, light wall swap. This will keep you up to date with your Magicka recovery for 20 seconds, so you only have to use it every second rotation. When it comes to execute, really simple. Beast trap, swap. Spear, light wall, swap. 3 Jesus beams. Light, beast trap, swap. Light spear, light wall, 3 Jesus beams. Repeat, 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 repeat until it's dead. Don't start beaming unless it's an ad at about 40% or a boss at about 35 to 30%. Anything before that, you're going to have a negative effect because you're going to be doing less damage than you would be doing with your jabs. In the meantime, if you really want to, you can, of course, keep up Ritual of Retribution if you want to add the extra heal to your group at the time. Choice is yours, however. This will actually work out really, really well, and your rotation shouldn't run out of juice. If you do find that you are struggling at any point in time with your recovery, you can, of course, change your food, or what you can do is keep an eye on Off Balance. Since you're the one supplying it, you should know what it looks like, and make sure you heavy attack during that part of the rotation. So where that happens on your front bar, instead of doing 3 lots of jabs, just replace any of those jabs, 1 or 2 of them, with a heavy attack. You'll do equally as much damage, you'll start adding to splash damage as well, and you'll get your resources back. Now, if you look at these, you've got a bit of a ballpark figure to look at. Now, you can crack about 80k if you're using Sororia and Holofang all day long. You can hit about 75 to 78, sometimes 80k if you're very lucky with Overwhelming and Holofang. And if you're using Thrashing Stranglers, you can hit this. And that's a bit nuts, but that is risk for reward. So the choice is, of course, yours. So, first of all, thank you very much for watching. I hugely appreciate the support. If you are not subscribing already, please do hit that button. It is free. Don't forget to hit the notification bell as well so you know when I'm uploading new videos. And there's a lot of new builds coming. Now, if you want to help support outside the channel, there are, of course, links in the info section below for Patreon, Twitter, Facebook, and, of course, the website XynodeGaming.com. And I live stream every night except Wednesdays from 10 PM UK time on Twitch, where you can come and watch live and see some of the builds going off, or just join for a chill out. Once again, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.